another unfair question. Get myself in real trouble on this one.
It's organic.
I think that the globalized economic system will resist, will continue to resist. It wants to maintain the current system. I mean, the oil-based system. I mean, that's really what I'm talking about here. So the resistance is deep and resistance is futile. I mean, we will have to make the change. But there's another step that we can take before this shift to renewables, this obvious step to renewables, happens, and that is to dramatically reduce our consumption. And you know, Al Gore a couple of years ago announced a plan of how we could get to all renewable energies by 2020, I think, and you know, had it all worked out, you know, the whole plan, but never ever did he mention, by the way, in the meantime, it'd be a good idea to reduce your consumption. He never said that. No politician will. And I think it was a tragedy that he didn't take the opportunity to exhibit some real leadership before the world with that, but he missed it. I think he really failed us. And this is part of what transition is about, is showing people how to reduce our consumption, not just our energy consumption, but consumption of all kinds, because we know we must. We don't have any choice but to do that, even though it's not on most people's radar.
Well, it's going to be difficult in the States because both the political and the economic structure is built around our existing situation. Right? There are changing course for the United States or for the rest of the developed world is going to be similar to changing course with a supertanker. Right? You can't turn on a dime. It takes a while to shift things. We've got all of these processes integrated, lobbyists who are hired by the fossil fuel industry, subsidies that are applied, tax breaks that are written into law. You know, and all of these things are applied to the benefit of the existing structure. To change that structure, each of these things has to go through its own particular change. It's not simply a question of technology. It's a question of society and culture.
I think that without the national government, without a clear sense that, you know, there is an issue here and there is a way to deal with it, I have this feeling in the U.S. and partly what I taught and maybe what I know the most about is American housing policy, and that's another area where, you know, we just go, you know, we're going to build big high-rises for low-income people, and then you do that for 7 or 8 years, and then a new president gets elected. No, we hate high-rises. We're going to let everybody, you know, of a low mid-range income buy their own home. So then you do that for a couple years, then somebody new gets elected, and then it switches. And so you never know where the funding is going to come from, how it's, and it just seems like we need to just settle down and get a few clear kind of pole stars that we work toward. And energy independence is certainly one of those.
Number one thing preventing the widespread implementation of solar is just cost. Once the cost comes down, then everybody can afford it and everyone can implement it. That's the simple answer. I mean, there's political answers, there's all sorts of things, but that's just talk. Just really innovation, efficiency going up, cost coming down, just like laptops, computers.
Cost is a big factor. So right now, utility scale wind turbines are cost competitive with the incentives that all energy sources enjoy. So renewable energy such as wind, there are tax credits for particularly the big wind turbines that make them cost effective. They are being installed and they compete well with conventional energy, electrical sources like fossil fuels, coal, natural gas. Solar is heavily incentivized, and it's doing well in particular states and around the nation where there's a good solar resource and good incentives. For distributed wind energy and distributed renewable energy in general, technology is still progressing to the point to get reliable equipment in place.
So the question is, what's holding back widespread deployment of renewables? And part of it's just momentum. I mean, it's very difficult. You have to change infrastructure in a lot of cases to change technologies. And we spent the last 100 years building up a conventional fossil fuel-based infrastructure. So you don't just flip that switch overnight. It takes a while. Cost is another one. The reality is, as long as there are uncosted parts of the other technologies that aren't included in the cost, then renewables don't look as attractive. Now, of course, what is the cost of pumping tons of carbon and tons of pollutants, for instance, in burning coal? What are those uncosted elements of burning coal? Well, you don't have to pay that on your utility bill, so it's kind of hard to compare that. So cost traditionally is the biggest argument, that renewables just cost more. But it's also, there's some mindset changes. Renewables tend to be distributed. Renewable energy is a distributed technology. You have 1 kilowatt per square meter, so you have to cover a lot of land. You have to spread it out. It's instead of concentrated into a central plant. So utilities like to think, okay, if I have a central plant and I'm dealing out the power and metering it out, I can control it. If you have it on your roof, and you have it on your roof, and you have it on your roof, then that's a distributed thing. I don't have control over that. And it's a different business mindset. A little bit more cynical answer would be that the difference between concentrated energy like fossil fuels and distributed energies like renewables is also you can have concentrated wealth versus distributed wealth, right? And so with fossil fuels, a few people become obscenely wealthy, whereas with renewables, you would have to spread the wealth around more. And you're going to have more installers, you're going to have more people involved. That's one of the reasons the costs are up. You can't just build one plant and make gigawatts. You have to install lots of capacity all over the place, so you have to have more people involved. And so it distributes the wealth as well, but it's a different mindset. It's quite different for the utilities. And so I think those are probably the biggest reasons. Give me a couple of minutes, I could probably think of
do you mind saying the analogy for the PV budget that you told us?
Okay. Well, the other problem is the knowledge base, quite frankly. I know that when I was your age, I remember there was a report done by the British government that said, why is the United States so much better in semiconductors than we are? And the bottom line of the report was that there were 300 semiconductor physicists and engineers in Great Britain. There were 10,000 in the United States, right? And so we're kind of in a similar situation with renewables. We just don't have that critical mass of expertise and people with the skill sets. So, just to put that in perspective, the entire solar budget for the United States is about $250 million, and with that you could create, you could produce one movie like a Harry Potter movie. The entire PV budget for the United States is on the order of $120 or $30 million, and that's the salary cap for one NFL team. So it's just a critical mass of scientists and engineers really aren't there yet. And so how do you incorporate these things into the grid? How do you change an entrenched technology? It takes a lot of effort. The other problem is that you have a grid system that's not only old, but you have to educate the utilities. So when I started in this business before the gray hair, I remember the utilities would say 1 or 2% of an intermittent resource like wind or solar on the grid will bring it to its knees. We can never get to more than 1 or 2%. And now they're saying, well, maybe 20%. So this number has creeped up, about 1% a year. But there's some utilities that have 40 or 50% wind on their utility, and they're not crashing to their knees. So educating the utilities is another. It's a very conservative industry. There's an old joke that that, you know, if you have early adopters and then kind of the peak adopters and then the late adopters and then you have the utilities. So it's a very hard industry to get to change what they're doing.
The lack of education around it, the lack of understanding of how it works, where you get it, what the options are, what's available. I think just the overall understanding that it actually is a tangible, immediate source of energy that we can use without it being. It's not a technology of the future. It's definitely a technology of today.
I think there's. I guess what comes up for me in this moment is that there's a deeper sort of, you know, psychic and emotional investment in it that it takes, right? The you know, there's got to be, you know, to use kind of a crass phrase, some sort of buy-in, right? But not like a buy-in because it makes sense, but like an actual, you know, buy-in that's like an emotional buy-in, a heartfelt buy-in of like, this is important. I care about my world. This needs to happen. And I think, you know, I would just off the top of my heart, I would say that probably the most effective means of enlisting people actually would look along the lines of how to elicit that level of buy-in, you know, that level of commitment, so that they can actually feel in their beings like, oh, right, this is important, and it's important now, you know, and I you know, of course I want to be invested in this, not because the science makes sense, not because, you know, I'm freaked out about coal. I mean, all that's part of it, but like, how do you elicit that deeper investment in people, so that the kind of action that it's going to take, you know, on a political level, the kind of action it's going to take on an organizational level, on a design level, on an implementation level, actually can happen. You know, so that people have that deeper initiative to see it through.
Awesome.
I don't know. Well, personally, I think that a lot of people just aren't educated. I mean, they don't know any better than to go coal mining and to drill for oil in the ocean.
I think part of it is the big companies, like, that are still insisting, like, this is the cheapest way to make energy. This is how we should be doing this. This gives us money. And I think part of it is also denial. I mean, like, there might be, like, plenty of people out there, I think there are, who, like, know about these things, but they just choose to do nothing about it.
Yeah, yeah.
To me, it's a no-brainer, but everybody needs a brain. So.
Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, B-roll.
That's your favorite. All right, we're done. B-roll.
Where are all the girls? Yeah, not here today.
So I don't think there is any drawback, honestly.